we're getting back to levels we saw in mid-August. And if you look over time, actually, and say the trend is your friend, for the last 10 years, it's actually paid people to buy dips. What's interesting to me is that some of the stocks that you would consider more stalwarts, if you will, in the technology sector, we're seeing our clients buying over the last couple of days on these dips. Starting, of course, with Apple, which is still the #1 held stock at the firm, and Microsoft are the two that sort of lead the way. It was interesting to me last week, and there seems to be a little bit of a dichotomy for people figuring out, does this mean the end of the stay-at-home trade and the beginning of something more, as Michael talked about, or not? Because Peloton was a buy for our clients last week, which I find interesting, because at the same time, a stock like Activision, which is one of the stay-at-home stocks, was a sell. So there's really, I think, a few different questions going on right now in terms of what does that mean. We're seeing people, as you said, taking money off the table from many of these stay-at-home stocks, not necessarily putting it on in a big way yet in others. But I wonder if some of that has to do with so many people seeing their kids back to school now, thinking that, okay, maybe I'm going to go back to the office soon also.
Well, I think a lot of people wish that their kids were going back to school now. I think in most school districts, they are trying to figure out the brave new world of virtual learning. So we will certainly see. And Peloton, which you mentioned, yes, it has been up about 10% in that ballpark earlier today. But when you say the trend is your friend, I mean, these handful of tech stocks have now grown to become about a quarter of the overall S&P. And so if they start to crater, what does that do for the broader market? And do you feel comfortable, holding the index itself?
Well, I think, yes, it becomes a very difficult thing to hold overall. It's one of the reasons that, hopefully, we've seen many new entrants into the market over the last 6 months. Hopefully they're taking advantage of some of the education so they actually understand what they're getting into. And with that, yes, it does become much more difficult to hold these overall indices. And if you do, maybe you get in a little bit at a time thinking you may get a better opportunity to buy things if we continue lower. But overall, if you look at stocks like Apple, Microsoft, more well-established, if you will, technology stocks, you also have to look at your time frame. This isn't necessarily just a 2-day or 3-day trade. For many people, these are stocks are going to hold on for a long period of time. So again, I also think the bigger question investors should be asking themselves is this a short-term play that I'm playing for the next couple of weeks, or is this a longer-term play that I want as part of my portfolio? And I think that that's often the part of the conversation that gets lost when we start talking about some of the names that are being bought and sold. Obviously some of them are more short-term plays. You can see that. But I think that some of these, particularly again, the more established technology stocks, become longer-term plays overall for folks.